A little dramatic, right? Today is binding day. I need to bind all this. That's a lot, huh?
Just a little, huh?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tiffany. Welcome to my quilting life. It is So Sunday. Today, I'm going to bind for So Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all of you men out there who are stuck watching your wives watching me. Happy Father's Day. So I'm going to just kind of, because I got a lot to do. I made all of my binding. I chose a thread color. I even rolled a bobbin for each of my thread colors. Okay. This is all pre-thought out binding here. So I have 9 quilts. Where did that one? 9 quilts that need binding. One's getting a brown, one's getting a blue, one's getting a yellow. We got a pink, a charcoal, a cream, a green, and a red. All for this lovely stack of 9 quilts. Will I get 9 quilts done today? No, probably not. But, you know, I'll get what I get done. How about that? So I'm going to actually go ahead and put with each quilt their binding and their thing. Now, I've already gone ahead, like I said, and made the binding. It's 2.5-inch binding. It's folded, raw edge to raw edge, right sides out. It's 2.5-inch cut. I did the amount that I needed for each quilt and or 2 amounts because some of them are getting the same, like these 2 right here. Get that. And then this one right here gets the green. And then this one right here gets the brown, which I'm just going to stack it behind me. And I'll show you each quilt. Let me just get them all situated. This one gets the yellow. And yes, I did spend a lot of time making all this, and this is why I did not do it for the video, because if I would have sat to try to make 9 bindings that I need done, then I would be here forever. And this would be a live stream that goes on and on and on. Pink goes with this one. And this is me getting stuff done out of my closet filled with quilts. This one goes with this one. And last but not least, my Star Wars quilt, which I did not add the tag to because I kind of wanted to show you guys, since I went ahead and quilted it real quickly, like, because I was in a mood. I made a tag for it. Press the login.
Which one?
This one. Hit that. Hit continue. Scroll down. Press allow.
I forgot how to do this. I haven't do it so long.
Yeah, it does this every once in a while.
Well,
sorry, guys, he couldn't figure something out on the computer. And you go to the bot right there. And if it turned itself completely off, you just need to turn it back on right there. Ta-da!
Yay!
This should be working now.
Do you want to say hi to everybody?
All right, let's say hi to everybody while I situate that. And Scott's going to show you guys the tag.
Oh, I am? Okay, I am. I am.
Glasses. So that's my Star Wars tag that he's holding up now. We got Sandy, Shelly, Pat Boo, June, Donna, Linda, Ellie, Dawn, Lois, and Quilt Fact, Milena, Samantha, Diane, Melina, Michelle's Crafts and More, Lois, Terry, Zarina, Judy, and so many more. Welcome, welcome, everybody. I hope you guys liked my tag. It says, well, it's the Star Wars thing. So in the beginning, it says, in a galaxy far, far away. That's the name of my quilt. There was a quilter named Tiffany Groff. She sewed up this quilt at light speed in the year of 2024. You know, your tag only needs to have your name and the year, maybe a location if you want, and the name of a quilt so that it can identify it. So I have both my identifying markings in here, Tiffany Groff and 2024. perfect, right? So if you guys are making Star Wars quilts, you could do stuff like that with your quilt. Take a theme from the movie and turn it into, from the movies, plural, and turn it into a lovely tag. That's the only one I didn't attach because I wanted to show you guys the tag because I had fun with it. All right, we're going to start with the little ones because they're literally probably the fastest ones that I can do. So I'm going to snip that thread, put this thread up here, tie them off, pull them through, and we're going to get started on attaching binding. Got to put the bobbin in here too now. Swap that for that. Throw that in the drawer for my little cubby thing. And I'll show you each quilt as I do this, because I did manage to get quite a bit of quilts done. I did more than 9, obviously. I just only have 9 here done and ready to be bound. So the first 2 are, if you guys remember last Christmas, I gave you guys a new pattern for a Christmas tree, wall hanging or lap quilt, whatever you want it to be kind of thing. So there's 2 of them. I made one as a sample to make sure for the video, and then I made the video. So I'm going to go ahead and put binding on them. I already, like I said, have my tag. This one has not a corner tag. It has just a flippy tag. And I made a buttload of binding for these 2 quilts. Hopefully it's enough. Yes, I tied the threads together like I do with a serger, like I do on my long arm, like I do on my embroidery machine. I just tie them and pull the thread through. It's a habit now because I used to not. I used to thread it every time, but over the years of using long arm and now the embroidery machine, I kind of just got used to pulling it through. So that's what I do now. All right. I'm just going to find an end, and if, oops, that way. We just want to make sure that the seams don't land in the corners, because I don't want seams in the corner. So if it's not in the first corner, then it shouldn't be in any other corner. Oops, I forgot to put it through the needle hole at least. Darn. I knew I was forgetting to do something. So I put this on the back and then I roll it to the front. If you've ever been here and watched me bind quilts before, I leave a 10-inch or so tail. That's for the attaching. And then I sew with a 1/4-inch seam right about there. We have a Brother PRS 100 embroidery machine. I sew with a 2.5 stitch length when I attach the binding, but when I wrap it to the front, I do a 3, which is like 10 stitches per inch. And this process for me goes a little bit faster than anything else I do with the quilting or making the quilt or anything quilt related. This is the fastest thing I do is binding, I think. I'm so used to it. Came off the corner. I pivoted it a 1/4 of an inch. Sometimes I stop at a 1/4 inch and just tie the thread off, but most times I pivot now. And then I just fold it and go to the other side.
Pivot, pivot,
Yeah.
pivot. Where they're trying to take couch up the stairs.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't watch enough.
Watch Friends.
I didn't watch enough Friends episodes. Yeah.
Did you show them what your shirt said?
Yeah, my shirt says "May the 4th be with you," even though it's not the 4th, but we're quilters, so "May the 4th be with us" is an all the time thing. I'm using that right now. My 1/4 inch.
What makes batik fabric batik, and how can you tell if it's a batik? If a fabric is batik.
Batiks are well, batiks are usually have one right here. like, I don't know, you can feel it, you can see it. Usually you can tell that they're dyed like this. I mean, there are some fabrics that are dyed, but it's a lot thinner, tighter woven than regular fabric. And here's regular fabric right here. I have to pull out a little project to do this. You can see the weave on regular fabric, especially if you turn it to the back side. On a batik, you really can't. And you can tell that they're dyed, like I said, and they do not have writing on the selvage. So the selvage is kind of just plain. Oops. I got a little mini quilt going on in this little bag right here. So batiks are usually a different, you can tell they're like waxy, but not waxy, you know, if that makes any sense. Once they're washed, though, they're not like that. They're not stiff like that. At the corners, it comes off this way. You just turn it to where it's straight this way, creating a 45-degree miter right there on the side, and then you flip it on top of itself, pivot the whole quilt, and continue on. I just sew in from the edge. I don't go in a 1/4 inch. I used to, but I don't anymore. I kind of got lazy and, you know, try to do the faster I can get something done kind of thing. And yes, I am continuously sewing in some parts when I can adjust it. Oh, I went 1 stitch too far right there. And if you're curious, this quilt is 45 by 55 and a half. So that's why it's getting done so quick, because it's not very big.
Starting with the little ones first.
Yeah, start with the little ones first, yes. Get them done and out of the way.
Have you ever used the compensating feet for the Juki?
Have I used the compensating feet? No. Well, yeah, I have. I have one. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I made plenty of binding for this. It's going to go in my binding bin, the leftovers of this one. There's a lot. All right. This is, everyone hates this step. I love this step because that's how you know you're finishing the quilt the rest of the way. Stop it right about here. All right. So I'm on the final stretch. I stopped it. Here's my initial tail and my other tail. I'm just going to straighten things out. I'm going to cut off just a little 1/2 inch cut just so that I have this little piece for the width. I'm literally just going to lay it right here next to it so that I know where I need to cut the top one. I'm going to smooth that out on top. Hold it where it needs to be. Everything looks smooth. I'm not pulling or tugging. Right there. 2.5 inch. My little measuring tape piece, that's what I call that. I'm just going to move this out of the way, change my stitch length back down to a 2, and I'm going to connect the 2 ends, right sides together in an L shape. I always put the bottom one on top. Some people put the top one on top, but I do the bottom.
What's the compensating foot?
Huh?
What's the compensating foot?
It's a, let me see. I'm not sure it is the compensating foot. We're going to see if it is right now. I do know that it sews a 1/4 of an inch. It's like a 1/4 of an inch foot. I think it's this foot, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, they're labeled, are they?
Nope, they're not labeled. All right. I cut away my excess, and now to stitch the rest of the way.
Camera
I can't sit there. Well, yeah, on the next one.
Okay.
I can't sit there because then it'll be in my way. Alrighty. Yeah, this one will do from the front, and then I'll turn it to the next one. Okay, I'm just gonna flip it around so that I can roll my binding to the front. Scissors back there. I'm gonna change my stitch length to a 3. And I'm literally rolling it to the front. And then I just tuck everything in and stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then when I do the next one, I'll show you guys. We'll put the camera up close. Only because these ones are little. The rest of the quilts, though, are a lot bigger, so it's harder to have the camera closer. I'm mitering my little corner, and I'm holding it. Pivot. Sew down. I use my fingers to hold the binding super flat as I'm sewing it. And so it looks like I'm getting my fingers really close to the needle. I'm really not, but it looks like it. Like I said, this is probably the fastest thing that I do because I'm so used to it. One stitch right there. Thank you. Yeah, I go quick with binding. And I can't sew a straight line, so it's not like perfectly 1/8 of an inch all the way around the edge, but it's as close as I could possibly get it. I try my best to use the foot as a guide to keep it in that same spot the whole way, but it doesn't always work out. But sometimes it's like spot on, especially if I sew slower, but you know, that's just not me. Self-binding method, yes, I have. I have videos on it where you know, stitch all the way around or stitch your back to your front. Like what's left over 1 inch away, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Yeah, I've done all those. Lots of different ways of binding or finishing the quilt is pretty much what it is.
Where do you get the rulers that you use?
My rulers come from anywhere and everywhere that I get them from. Yeah, you can get rulers anywhere. All the websites, Back Quarter Shop, Missouri Star, Connecting Threads, QBPN, all of them, they all sell rulers. They all have their own brand. Like Missouri Star has its own brand. And then everywhere else sells a variety. Some only exclusively sell certain specific products, you know.
For the Christmas tree on one of your videos?
Huh? Yep, it's like, we did it like a month before Christmas. Did we do it a month before Christmas?
I don't remember.
You'd have to go to right before Christmas of 2023 and see.
Where did you get the pattern?
I made it myself. This is my own made-up pattern. So it's a verbal visual video. It's on a So Sunday that I did it. Pretty sure of it. I'm going to cut away my starting thread so that there's no long tail. Huh?
You said where you got the pattern from?
I designed this pattern myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
You already told me.
Yes, I told him that. Yes, that's what I said. All right. 1 of 9 done. 8 more to go. So there's that.
What's the go-to ruler that you prefer?
My go-to ruler that I grab all the time is this one right here, my Missouri Star ruler. I don't have any affiliate links for this. That one, and then the smaller one. So this one's 5 by 15, and this one's 2.5 by 8. Those are my go-tos because I use a lot of pre-cuts. All right, and here's the back of the quilt. I quilted Christmas trees on it. Yes, I quilted Christmas trees in June. Jim put a link for the video. All right, 1 down. Let's fold this as best as possible for now. And move on to the next. And we're going to put the camera over here next to me for you guys to see this. The camera is moving. It can stay plugged in. The cord reaches all the way around. Okay. I can't put it directly next to me because of the way my position of my space is. All right. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch seam guide on there. It's not a 1/4 inch seam guide. You line it whatever seam number you want. I am putting it at 1/4 inch. I'm going to grab the wrong side of my quilt, or the back side of my quilt face up. I'm going to grab the end of the binding. I'm going to find where there's a seam real quick. Okay. Because I don't want that on the front. Now remember, the open side goes towards the edge or the raw edge of your quilt. So open side, raw edge. And I'm going to change my stitch length down to a 2.5. And I back stitch it first, so that way when I pull on it to hook the 2 tails together, it is tacked down. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew. I'm going right over my tag. And I'm coming to the edge. I'm going to pivot when I'm a 1/4 inch away from that edge. So I'm going to take a couple stitches and I'm going to pivot. I want you guys to see. Let me zoom in and put it down. There we go. Here's the tip of the quilt. I'm a 1/4 inch away from that tip. So when I sew off straight off this edge, I literally come off the edge like that. Where are we at? Right there. forgot that it's blinding this way. Can you see that? So it's pivoted off the edge. And then I just lift it out. Right there. So it's down. We're going to go this way to my right. I'm going to put my fingernail right here and then bring it to the left. Just like this, creating a fold exactly along the edge of the quilt. I'm going to hold it down, pivot the whole thing, and then start stitching again. Now, because I need a guide to sew straight, well, you can see I really don't, but I do. I don't because on the top stitch, I don't use a guide, but for the initial sewing it on, I like to have a guide. And, you know, I realize it's probably too bright for you guys, so we're going to pop that down. I'm literally holding my first finger and my thumb, my middle finger. My first finger is between the quilt and my first finger. I'm holding it down away from me, just lining it up with the edge of the quilt. This is how I sew jelly roll strips or jelly roll laces so fast, because I do this. Huh? I backstitched at the beginning. All right, so I'm coming right here. I think I went one stitch too far. I'm going to pivot. I could see the corner perfectly and sew off that edge, creating just a little half of a Y right here at the end. Fold it up on top of itself to the right, then over to the left. Take the whole thing. I do not backstitch right here because sometimes I need to pick that out because the backside gets too tight and I can't get those stitches out if I need to when I go to make the mitered corners. Once that's through, I'm going to put my fingers through this and hold it down. Adjust and sew. It's a lot easier with little quilts to do this than it is with the bigger quilts. Because the weight of the bigger quilts, I need to hold the quilt better. But these little ones, I can zoom right through. Coming up to another corner, again, I'm going to stop 1/4 inch from the edge. And I can see 1/4 inch from the edge because that's where my basting stitches from the long arm is. So there we are, pivot, sew off the corner, just like that. So it comes right off the corner. Flip it on to the right, fold it over to the left, and then stitch on. And now you guys can call me the fastest stitcher in the West. I could slang those stitches. One more stitch. Right there. Pivot. Go off the corner. Yeah, I used to stop 1/4 inch, break thread, then fold it, and then come in 1/4 inch and start, but yeah, I just backstitched accidentally. I guess it's force of habit. All right, I'm on that last final side. I'm going to find my end here where I started, and I'm going to bring it onto my lap where you can't see. I'm going to smooth it out so that I can see where I need to stop. So I'm going to stop about right here. I backstitched so that way when I start pulling on this, nothing happens. All right, remember that first little piece I cut off? Since it's the same thing, I'm just going to straighten this bottom one out. I'm going to lay this right here. Bottom straightened out. I'm going to lay my little piece that I cut off the last one right there. Smooth out the top on top of it. Go in between the top and the bottom and make my cut. And I have plenty of binding left over for whatever afterwards. Okay. This is the part that a lot of people get confused with. I'm going to take the top one. I do the top first because it's easier to remember. I'm going to lay that in front of me. Now I'm not twisting anything. I'm just taking the bottom as it sits, coming up, opening it up, and laying it on top of there, right sides together in an L shape. Then I'm going to sew from this corner to this bottom corner. I'm going to change my stitch length to a 2. I'm going to line this bottom corner up with the red line on my seam tape. Sew from corner to corner. And did I run out of bobbin already? What? No way. I did. Hold on, guys. I got to roll a bobbin. I didn't think I'd need more than one bobbin for this. But it looks like I do. I don't need a full bobbin, though. I only rolled one bobbin of each, so the big ones I'm probably going to have to roll a second. Okay, plop that down in there. I literally ran out of bobbin on that connector, so we're gonna have to fold this back up. It's a good thing it's partially connected. Okay, now I'm gonna try that again.
You're done.
I'm just holding it where the thing is on the line. Oh, well, I did not rethread my machine either, so I'm just using what's left. I just ran it through with that. I may rethread the machine so that we can wrap this around to the front. That's the only thing about using one spool of thread. I have to rethread because I didn't keep a long enough tail. Oh my goodness, come on, get in the hole. I don't have the proper lighting. Remove lighting.
How do you place the guidelines down to find the corner?
How do I place the guidelines down? You mean for the seam tape? If it's for the seam tape, even if it's not straight right here, it doesn't really matter because if you're putting your starting at the needle and if you had that bottom corner down here, you'd just be sewing it sideways, lining it up with the line. I mean, I don't know. If it's not totally perfect, I just put the red part up to the needle and then I always cut away. That's why it's the straightest right there. I always lay it there first and then I peel it back and cut it away from the feed dogs. And then I just lay it here. And then I line mine up with the bed of my, what is this called? Extension table. It has markings on it. I just line it up with that so that it's nice and straight right here. For a second. All right. I got to finger press this and cut excess away. Okay. Finger pressing. Then lay it flat. And continue on with the thing down. I pressed the foot pedal too quick. And then I just sew to about an inch beyond where I started. And then move that out of the way. Flip the whole thing over, and this is the easy part. Well, unless you have arthritis, especially if you do 2 1/4 inch binding. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna take it, pull it from the back to the front, line up my needle a 1/4 inch away, take a back stitch, change my stitch length to a 3. and all these loose threads. Sometimes I snip them, sometimes I just stuff them in. And I sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So I just use my finger to stuff in all those extra threads because they're in there permanently. And I just sew. When I get down here to the mitered corner, I pull the bottom up first, and then I just fold the top over to it, creating a mitered corner, just like this. And I just hold it there till I get to it. I always take a stitch in and out of that corner, in, out, and in, so it's tacked down and nothing can rip it from that lip. Because the 3mm on mine is like 10 stitches per inch, and I like it to be like my quilting, 10 stitches per inch.
What I don't understand is how you lay that clipped off piece. Right there doesn't help.
When I lay the clipped piece, well, you do it at a 45-degree angle like you would when you put the binding together. So I'm just sewing 1/8 of an inch from this edge, the folded edge, not 1/8 of an inch from this, because that's not going to work. I use my fingers to hold it as I go, so it keeps it flat, or else it wants to fold this lip under here. What I was trying to show it that it does it, but it didn't do it that very moment. Yeah, it doesn't do it when I want it to. All right, here to another corner. Just gonna fold that bottom up. And then I'm not even at the edge. Like, I'm literally just kind of pushing it over with my finger, making sure that everything's tucked in and flat, and it's perfect mitered corner. I sew right down to it. I sew right past that corner, 1 stitch into the new side and 1 stitch out and 1 stitch back in. That way it's back stitched. So when you have this beautiful, lovely corner right here, it's tacked down and nothing can lift this edge and rip it. Because I don't sew those lips down because I don't hand sew these. So I just leave those open. But it's nicely tacked down. And I'm using, this is how I generally try to sew straight. This side of the foot, this side is the 1/4 inch side. This side of the foot is 1/4 inch too, but I'm using the center of this side of the foot as a guide. So if this edge is lined up with the center of this foot right here, then I know I'm a 1/4 inch away. I mean, 1/8 of an inch away. And I try to keep it lined up that whole entire time. But of course, again, I can't sew straight. I've made plenty of crossbody bags, and I have videos on crossbody bags. All right, next corner, just folding the bottom up, rolling it over. Oops, let's get rid of that thread. Sometimes there's a thread in the corner, and it doesn't like to stay tucked in. It likes to come out. Oh, a little bit more fold, match those 2 corners, smooth that out, come down to it, 1 stitch in, out, in, right there, pivot, and stitch down. Smoothing it out. coming up on that next corner. This would be the last corner. Up and over. And if you don't trust your fingers holding it, you can use a stiletto if you want. If you don't know what a stiletto is, it is usually some of them their own thing, but it's this pointy thing right here that you would, hold this down. But I find that my brain seems to want to sew over it, so I just don't use it. I use it for some things, especially with my tiny piecing, but everything else I don't use it. But it's on the other side of most wooden seam rippers.
You ever have days where you just get burned out from quilting?
Yeah, I have days where I'm not burnt out. I just don't know what to do. I get those days where I just don't want to do anything. I don't think it's burnout, but this week I went, quilting crazy. So because I had a break between long arm jobs, so I was able to finally get a bunch of mine done. And once these are all done, I'll probably spend 2 or 3 days not sewing anything. All right, coming up to my start.
What size needles do you use?
This is a 90-14 needle. All right, I'm going to snip my starting thread, go onto the back, see if it, okay, it didn't, good. Fold it over nicely. And I always stitch about 1 inch into my previous stitching. I line it up, stitch on top of it, back stitch a few times, and then lift my needle and pull the thread away. That way I don't have a big bunch up of thread back here on the back side. So there it is, another quilt done. All right, Scotty, you can put the camera back now. I'll show you the whole quilt. Nope, it's right next to it. Come right here. So you can see the stitching is literally right next to it. It's in 1/8 of an inch on the front, but on the back side, it's right next to the back. Okay. Alrighty, so that quilt is done. Let's go to the next one. We'll do. Which rulers add the 1/2 inch? You mean add 1/4 rulers? That would be for quarter. I don't know if they have add 1/2 inch. I mean, I do have rulers like this. Let me lay it down here. Can you even see it? They're Funds and Porters Omnigrids, for drawing center lines. These are like 1/2 inch. Yep, they're 1/2 inch. Yep. I have those for drawing both sides of a line.
Yes, the quarter.
All right. Big quilt coming up. We're going to do.
Yeah, they want to see you up close to the big one.
All right. It's the same thing, but with the big ones. I'm going to open this up where it's wrong sides out.
How did you say you ended it without getting the thread bunched on back the quilt?
Oh, I ended it by back stitching and then going forward, back stitching. I'll show you again when I get to it on the front side of this one. All right, I'm going to tie this thread off, put the new yellow on. We are done with the cream. For now, it can just go right there. I will show the tag in 2 seconds. All right, this one's getting a yellow binding. I'm going to pull this through real quick. We're also going to put, this is still almost a half of the bobbin, so we're going to swap out this bobbin holder for this bobbin holder. Go on this, and then we're just going to put it in the drawer. All right. Probably going to end up having to roll a bobbin halfway through because this one's not a full one because I had it already wound for this color. Remember your little birdie threader, for those that don't know how to use this, your little birdie threader goes upside down to hold it and put the needle, the thread through the needle. The actual hook on it is upside down. It allows you to hold it better because if it was right side, it would be too far down and you wouldn't be able to get it in the hole. So just remember your birdie threaders go upside down. The tag on this is Garden Tiles, designed, pieced, and quilted by me in June of 2024. All right. 1/4 inch seam guide there. We're going to find the end of this binding. And we're going to find a seam because I don't want the seam right there. We're going to come up. Where's that seam? There it is. So there's my seam right here. So I'm going to come up higher like this. I'm going to leave a 10-inch tail or so. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's like 2 inches and then I like, oh, hey, I should have done this properly. All right. I'm going to change it back down to 2.5 stitch length for attaching it and get started. No, yes, the top edge is open on the label, yes. So where you can hide your money from your husband because you don't want him to know you have an extra $20 bill for fabric. So, you know, husbands, stop listening. Yeah. It's this little, it creates a little pocket at the bottom. Now I have to say only one quilt that I own on my own that I did a corner tag on. I must have not flattened it out that much or it shrunk funny in the wash because it, I caught it one time. It hangs off my bed a little because my quilts are bigger than queen size on my queen bed. And I was walking and this bottom part hangs off the, you know, the bed and the way it dried in the dryer, it was sticking like this and I didn't realize it. And it's under the bed because you could see the top, you know, the top of the quilt was there and my foot caught it and tripped me. Only one time that has happened. Now I remember, you know, to make sure my quilt is not hanging off on the floor as much because that way I don't trip on my tags, but that only happened once. All right, 1/4 inch from the edge, pivot, sew off the edge. Okay, I'm going to put it all to the right, then over to the left. This fold is now equal with that ledge, and this side is equal. It doesn't look equal, but I have the interfacing was sticking out a little right there. Now to turn the whole quilt because it's nice and large. Situate it on my lap. Pull my hair off the quilt. You guys all get DNA with every quilt on here. Every time I get rid of a quilt, it's covered with my hair. It ain't no pet hair, it's Tiffy hair. Move that because those tend to make their way down. All right. Oh, it would be smart not to have this tag right here at the edge of the size of this quilt. Oops, pull that off of there for the moment. This quilt is 69 by 83, just in case you guys were curious. It's not the biggest quilt of the day. That would be the Star Wars quilt. That would be the biggest one. up on another corner, stop, one more stitch, pivot, stitch off of it, put it to the right, then to the left, line it up, stitch it on, keep the needle down, maneuver whole entire quilt. Only thing about binding in the summertime is that these got to be on my lap, and I got under boob sweat like you wouldn't believe going on. It's killing me here. I can just feel it dripping down my gut. It's too hot here in the summer to have a quilt, even if it's cotton in it. And there I go, making 9 to do in one shot, you know.
We got 2.5 down.
2.5 of 9. Yep.
What type of foot are you using?
This is the Juki's. It's like a scant 1/4 inch foot. I just call it the 1/4 inch foot. It is just the traditional straight stitch foot. Nothing special for a straight stitch machine. Sometimes I can continuously sew with the big ones. Sometimes I cannot. All right, coming up right there. One stitch, pivot, break thread, turn, line it up, sew it. All right, adjust whole quilt. Oh my goodness. Ay, ay, ay.
You have a seam come up on a corner. Do you take it out and cut a little off and re-sew it, or leave it?
No. Okay, here's my theory on seams real quick. Here's a seam coming up right here. Notice it's within, I don't know, it's within 7, 8 inches of the corner. If a seam lands in the corner, I do not unstitch it or anything. I just build it and I just carefully stitch it into the corner, and then it gets mitered with that there, you know what I mean? To prevent the seams from landing, if you make sure before you attach the binding, like I do, that a seam is well before or well after your corner, then all of your seams should land well before or well after. Okay? So if I make sure that my seam is landing about, I don't know, 15, 20 inches from the edge on the top or on the bottom, you know, then all of my seams should never land in that corner. So I tend, and so far it's been good with about, I don't know, 75% of the quilts. There are those few times on the smaller quilts that the seam lands in that corner, but that's because it's a smaller quilt and our fabric length is like 42 to 44 inches. So just remember, anytime you have a seam, before you attach it to your first side, just put your seam, making sure it's about, you know, like I said, 15 to 20 inches above or beyond your corner. Then all of your next seams should be above or beyond your next corner. That way I don't have to lay the whole thing out, pin it all on, make sure there's no seams at the corner. I have noticed from binding so many quilts all these years that is, if it's before or after, then it's always going to land before or after. Unless you have a super pieced binding, then that's, I usually put the clip the binding on for pieced bindings. So see, we're coming near another edge, and here's another seam right here. So this seam is landing, for my theory here, this seam is about, I'd say it's about 21, 22 inches. So I just crossed the seam, and now we're going to come up on the corner. So it did not land in this corner. Oops, that's too far. One stitch, stay down, needle. Flip it, flip it. Very simple. All right, I'm on my last and final almost being matched up edge. So I'm gonna see where my tail lands. Right there, so it means I want to stop it right here. A little bit more. Right there. All right, so there's my tail. I'm literally going to just cut the selvage off right here. I'm going to use that as my straight. I'm going to smooth this out, smooth that out on top of it, opening up my selvage, making sure the fold is sideways next to me, not up and down, because, you know, that would be the wrong direction. Lay it on here, throw the scissors in, and make the cut. And sometimes my cut is crooked, so I will just carefully straighten it out. And that'll be nice and tight little edge right there. Remove my little stupid piece. I don't need it now because I've already done this. Here's this one more time up close. Let's see. Oh, let's get rid of that shadow for a second so that you can see. So I'm going to take right here, this top one. It's laying flat. I always do the top first. This is the most easiest. So I open it up and I just lay it in front of me. It's right side up. Then I take the bottom tail and see it's exactly still the way it was. Just going to open it up just like this. I'm not twisting or anything. I'm just shoving the quilt up, matching up these corners right here sideways like this. So there's no tangling. It looks like it because I'm, you know, shoving the quilt up like this, but it's not. So I'm going to align this top edge and this side edge, and I'm going to go in with a 2mm stitch length and sew from this corner down to this bottom corner. And you can see I'm just following the line, keeping that quilt bunched up. And before you do anything, if you're a newbie, open it up to make sure you have it correct first. And I do. So I'm just going to open this back up now, or fold it back up, the quilt, so that I can expose this whole seat, the whole piece that we made. I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away. I always just do this with scissors. I never take it to a rotary cutter. I used to in the beginning, but I haven't done that in years. And then I just finger press it to one side, because this isn't a finger pressed open kind of thing. I only do that every once in a while. Depends on the quilt. So most times I just finger press it open because the seam is distributed equally once it's folded in half. Then I come to about 1 inch before I stopped, right here. And then I backstitch, line the whole thing up. And then I'm going to come to about 1 inch after where I started. And I just created a pleat. See that pleat right there? When I fold it around, it'll be a slight pleat, but that's because I didn't cut exactly 2.5 inches. It's just a slight pleat. It's not even going to be noticeable unless I tell you, which is what I just told you. You're only going to see it because I said it. All right, we're going to flip it over now. Move my seam guide because I don't need it. A cactus sunrise quilt? No, I've not. All right, and this is my leftover binding. So I had exactly the right amount of strips that I needed for that. I did use my Robert Kaufman app for most of these quilts so that I had plenty. All right, it's folded over to the front. I need more light, so I'm just gonna reopen that back. Come on, stay in there. Oh, come on, stay in there. All right, and I'm gonna just change it to a 3mm. I'm going to back stitch at my start. I'm I'm 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge. I'm going to back stitch right there at the beginning, and now I'm just going to folding it, sewing it. And I am yellow on yellow, so it's kind of hard to see it with yellow thread on yellow binding, which is next to a yellow border. But I kind of wanted to continue that yellow polka dotted theme of the edge of this quilt. All right, so I'm gonna fold up this corner right here. Folding it up, folding that over, and they match up every single time. Hold it with my finger, come right up to it. I take a stitch in and out and in, and then start going the other way. I do that to hold it down. All right, so I'm just gonna speed sew through this till the other corner because I have a lot of ground to cover in the length of this quilt. Let's hope the bobbin makes it the whole way. I really love the look of binding being wrapped to the front as opposed to the back. I think it looks very clean. Oh, there it did. It folded it. It does that sometimes. It's off to the side. So the stitch is about almost 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Sometimes people stitch it from the back side. So they'll go to the back, keep it on the back of the quilt and then stitch in this ditch. But what happens is, especially with this size binding, let me just fold it over so that you can see. So when the binding is 2.5 inches and you stitch from the back side in that ditch, you're gonna have your stitching well back right here and you're gonna have this big, huge lip right here on the front. And I don't like that. Now on 2.25 inch, it's fine. You land exactly at 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the front. But on 2.5 inch, you do not when you stitch in the ditch from the back. And that's why some people are using those compensating feet for binding so that it lands perfectly all the way around so you can sew from the back or the front. So let me get it a little bit further so you can see that corner. A little bit further so that I'm not yanking it. All right. So the stitch is landing right here, almost 1/4 inch from the edge. So if you did 2.25 inch binding, it would be closer because you'd be stitching in the ditch. You'd be a lot closer to that ditch. But I've never minded since I used yellow thread to quilt this. It is a yellow binding color, so it looks just fine. It looks like a basting stitch all the way around the outer perimeter anyway. So I've never really minded that. Is that a word? I didn't really care if it shows on the back, but it's right on the edge here. It looks great. And back here, it looks great to me. under, fold that over. And pivot. So imagine if you stitched in the ditch. You see this lip right here? If you stitched in the ditch, that would be way over here, and this lip would be more than 1/4 of an inch. It would be enormous. So that's why I just do it the way I do it. So if you're like, if you stitched in the ditch and say your batting was showing because you kept the quilt straight when you cut it and you still had, say, some batting showing on the front because the top, you know, just ever so slightly shifted right here and you had batting right there. When you folded it over, but you stitched it from the back, if you lifted that little lip, you could take the chances of that batting just showing right through, which I do have a quilt that has that. I didn't go all the way up to the batting on a part of the quilt. So this ensures that it covers everything, just in case you have, you know, had to straighten out a quilt with the final trim. Oh, this is a workout. I need to drink water. Nah. Okay. Excuse me. You can also use a walking foot if you think that you need one for attaching your binding. I don't ever need my walking foot. I think this foot is good for binding. But you can use a walking foot if you needed to. Okay, I'm at the area where my tag is, so it's a little bit thicker right here. When I get far enough beyond it, I'll show you where that stitch lands because the tag is white on this quilt. It's actually white on most of today's quilts except for the Star Wars one and the 2 little, or 3 of the little ones, the Christmas ones.
Is there any time that you recommend not using the walking foot?
Anytime what?
That you not recommend using the walking foot. I use mine all the time and don't know if there's a downside.
You can use your walking foot all the time for an even feed. I just don't use it because mine sounds like a machine gun and it's big and bulky. Like it's really bulky for this machine. All right, just a little bit more to go. This one has 80-20. Actually, all of today's quilts have 80-20 in them because I noticed that I haven't been using 80-20 and I have a whole brand new roll in my 100% cotton that my clients always want turn into a very small amount. So we're using 80-20 today for everything. I just cut a bunch of 80-20 off because, yeah, I have like 2 big, huge rolls of it and my cotton is running low because I've been doing lots of client quilts. So all of these today are all 80-20, which to me have no difference between 100% cotton. They're all hot. Okay, almost to my start. And I'll show you what I mean about going beyond my starting stitches. So my starting stitches are right here. I am going to stitch carefully up to it. I'm going to match my needle so that it crosses over on itself. And I'm going to stitch into there about 1 inch. On that same thing, back stitch. Go forward a little bit, back stitch. Go forward a little bit, and lift my needle, pull it away. And then, instead of having any bunching back here, which has the starting bunch right there, it leaves it nice and clean, the stitching right there. So there's a little bit of back tacking in the same thing. And yes, that is brown thread, because when I was quilting, I go through all my quilts when I'm done with them, by the way, and I snip the basting stitches that stick out beyond the binding. I do that later, it's a later step, but sometimes it sticks out. Anyways, that one is now done. All right, you can take the camera back so I can hold the quilt up and then they can see, and then I'm gonna get started on another one. Yep, please. All right. The yellow back where the yellow goes. Yeah, my room is a lot smaller than it appears. For those that, you know, have never been in here. All right, camera is moving as carefully as he can. And that is the finished quilt. So that was that. I think it was called Garden Tiles or something like that. I don't know what I named it. Maybe it was called Garden Path and I named it Garden Tiles. Yeah, I called it Garden Tiles, but the pattern